Hi guys, welcome back. In our previous video, we had a look at some long-term renewable resources, which were the fossil fuels. So what we're going to do now, we're going to look at a few shorter-term, more renewable resources called biofuels. And we're going to compare these to the fossil fuels and see if these would be more appropriate or better in terms of their energy production and in terms of the amount of waste that is produced. Okay, so let's talk about what a renewable resource actually is. So resources that can be replaced quickly are generally considered renewable. So in the past, we would have called something like coal or oil a non-renewable resource, but they've changed the wording or changed the definition slightly. So now we call it a long-term renewable resource. So if you just hear the term renewable resource, it's talking about these fast-paced or these easy-to-replace compounds. So we have 4 different types of renewable resources that we use. So solar is something that's really common here in Australia. Wind power, not so much, and wave power, not so much, but they are somewhat commonly used in other countries, especially in areas that have large land masses available to be able to produce energy from wind, or in places such as over near the UK, there's huge amounts of wave energy that's produced over there due to the way that the inlets and their bays are actually set up. And these are all natural processes that we as humans can take advantage of, which is really cool. Biofuels, on the other hand, biofuels are something that we actually have to produce, and then we would burn these compounds just as we would burn regular or fossil fuels, I should say. So biofuels are very similar to the fossil fuels, but there's a couple of key differences. So biofuels that are made from plant material is called bioethanol. And so what's actually being produced is a type of alcohol. And if you look at the energy output of alcohol, the energy output of alcohol is actually very similar to the energy output of fat in the body. Okay, so animal material or animal fats are often used to make biodiesel. So they have similar levels of energy from each of these, if we were talking about the individual compounds. But bioethanol is considered slightly better, and I don't like to say that it's better for the environment because it's not actually good for the environment. We're still producing some carbon dioxide here. But what's actually happening is because we have to grow these plants up in the first place to make the biofuel, a lot of that carbon dioxide has been absorbed before we then re-release it to the environment. And so the net impact is actually a lot less compared to other fuels. So having a look here at this table now, we've really only have a couple of extra fuels here on the end to compare to. So this table here, we showed you that coal is actually pretty, it's okay. It's not the best in terms of its energy production, and it has a really, really high amount of carbon dioxide that's produced. Crude oil produces a lot more energy, but it still produces really high amounts of carbon dioxide, and it also produces a lot of these toxic intermediate compounds. Refined crude oils such as petrol and diesel also produce relatively high amounts of energy and have a little bit lower carbon dioxide that's released. So if we have a look at bioethanol, now bioethanol, it's not quite as condensed as what coal would be, or not quite as condensed as what a crude oil would be. And so it doesn't quite have as much energy stored in the bonds. And this is actually just slightly lower compared to coal. But if we compare this to the amount of waste that's produced, there's actually 1.9 kilograms of carbon dioxide per kilogram of fuel that's burnt that's been released. So this is actually a lot better compared to coal. If we have a look at biodiesels, again, it's slightly lower compared to the crude oil counterpart, but it's still quite high, and it's actually higher than what's produced by coal. And if we have a look at the amount of carbon dioxide that's produced, the amount of carbon dioxide that's produced compared to coal is a lot less. So why wouldn't we choose to use these compounds? Well, a lot of the time it really comes down to either a matter of accessibility or a matter of economics. So with biodiesel, it doesn't flow quite as easily as what other compounds do, like the petrols and the diesels and the crude oils. And just because, you know, it's able to produce a lot less carbon dioxide, that doesn't mean that in the long run, financially, you're going to be better off, because it costs so much to be able to try and make this material flow through pipes so that we can actually use it. It's actually not as viable for society as what we would think. So it's very easy to go, oh, why can't we just use that? Because, you know, it produces the same amount of energy, but a lot less carbon dioxide. Well, at the end of the day, it comes down to that economic factor. And I feel that that's always this sort of playoff that we have between the economy and between the environment. And some people are supportive of the short term. They're looking out for people and they're thinking, okay, so I want to make sure that everyone has jobs and everyone's able to provide for their family. And so a lot of the times when politicians are managing issues or managing policies around these issues, a lot of the time that's what they're looking at. They're looking at those short-term impacts. They're not looking at the longer-term impacts of what's happening in terms of the environment. All right, guys, so that was just my little spiel there on biofuels and how they compare to fossil fuels. And yes, they are a little bit better in terms of their waste production, but they do cost a bit more. And they're a bit more difficult to use compared to the crude oils and the coals. So I hope that sort of explained the issues and explained the differences between the two different types of fuels. All right, guys, I'll see you in the next one.